Yvonne finished the last mouthful of food on her plate and set her cutlery down. She could sit for a while. There was nothing requiring her attention just now. A sharp contrast to the hectic pace of the past few days. She and Guise had arrived in the royal city, the jewel of the Valand kingdom, only 2 days before, and had barely had time to draw breath since. A confrontation with the court's most senior circle mage, who had turned out to be a sorcerer steeped in blood magic, had been swiftly followed by a treasury full of deadly magical creatures. Then there had been the discovery of the murder of the court treasurer, and the circle mage had brought himself back from the dead, killing a good number of the king's soldiers to make his escape. The circle mage was still missing. Every resource of the Valand court was engaged in searching for him, and all the effort had yielded nothing so far. Hiram was as skilled at hiding as he was at forbidden magic. She shivered slightly in the morning sun and shoved thoughts of the blood sorcerer aside for now, seeking distraction. It was easy to find. "The food here is almost as good as Modig's," Yvonne said, leaning back in her chair, teacup held between her hands. Along with her empty plate, a range of beautifully made porcelain dishes, still holding enough food for at least one more full meal, almost entirely hid the pristine white tablecloth. The scents curling into the air were almost tempting her to another helping, even though she was sure she could not eat another bite. "The staff here would be delighted to hear you say so, Mristrian," Guise said, tone quite serious. "They have heard of Modig?" she asked, raising an eyebrow. They were sitting at one of the few tables on the roof terrace of one of the royal city's finest hotels, with unrivaled views of the great city around them. The royal city was the centre of the Valand kingdom, and one of the most law-abiding places in all the known lands. It was a far cry from Three Falls, the city of criminals, where Modig's hotel had been. And the staff here were all entirely human, as far as she could tell, unlike the part goblin Modig. "The best hotels keep an eye on each other," Guise answered, mouth lifting in a smile, a gleam in his eyes, which were bright green in the morning light. If the food and her surroundings had not been enough to hold her attention, Guise was a potent distraction. His voice was one of the most beautiful sounds in the world, even after the many years she had known him. He tilted his head, the sunlight catching on his long, silky black hair, turning his grey skin even paler, looking exactly what he was, a high-ranking lord of the Carawan Shea, used to the finer things in life. "The manager here has already asked me if I know how to find Modig, and if he might be looking for a new kitchen," he said. Yvonne laughed, shaking her head slightly, glad to be able to laugh after the past few days. The search for Hiram had been fast-paced and fruitless. They were all exhausted. The king, his general, the supposedly retired soldier, Sarah, who seemed to be second only to the general in the court, Guise, and Yvonne. And so Sarah had decreed a day off. They would reconvene the next day to decide on next steps. Yvonne had been tempted to argue, and was glad now that she had not done so. A good night's sleep, a long bath, an excellent breakfast, and the faint scents of the flowering plants twining around the roof terrace had relaxed her shoulders, making her realize just how fraught the last few days had been. She was slightly annoyed that Sarah had been the one to recognize that they needed rest, even though Sarah was an old, experienced warrior, used to managing soldiers. Nothing was normal now. The stone walls had been destroyed. The valley behind the walls, which had provided a safe haven for those with nowhere else to turn, was in ruins. Most of the inhabitants of the Sisters' Valley were dead, including Adira, whose loss still made Yvonne's heart ache. As if that pain was not enough, a sorcerer skilled in forbidden magic had been at the heart of one of the most powerful royal courts in all the lands. Yvonne had tried to kill him once and failed.